All right, how's everybody doing? So I wanted to show you these diminished triads, and we're going to show them like we did the major and minor triads. They're going to be in groups of 3 strings. They're going to be on the low E, A, and D, then the A, D, and G, then the D, G, and B, and then the G, B, and E. So that way you cover the whole spectrum there of the 6 strings. So we're going to start with the second inversion down here on the low E and A and D string. So we're going to place our first finger on the first fret of the D string. We're going to place our second finger on the second fret of the low E string. We're going to place our third finger on the third fret of the A string. And that's the second inversion of the C diminished triad. So now we're going to come up here to the 8th fret of the low E string with our fourth finger. We're going to place our second finger on the 6th fret of the A string. And then we're going to place our first finger on the 4th fret of the D string. And that's the root position of the C diminished triad. Now we're going to come up here to the third finger, or first finger is going to be on the 9th fret of the A string. Your second finger is going to be on the 10th fret of the D string. And your third finger is going to be on the 11th fret of the low E string. And that's the first inversion of the C diminished triad. Okay, so now we're going to go to the next set of strings, the A, the D, and the G string. And we're going to start up here with the second inversion of this C diminished triad. We're going to have our first finger on the 4th fret of the D string, our second finger on the 5th fret of the G string, and our third finger on the 6th fret of the low A string, the 5th string. First finger here on the 4th fret of the D, second finger on the 5th fret of the G, third finger on the 6th fret of the A string. Okay, and that's the second inversion. Now we're going to go up here to the first inversion. Our first finger is going to be here on the 8th fret of the G string. Our second finger is going to be on the 9th fret of the A string. Our third finger is going to be on the 10th fret of the D string. And that's the first inversion. Now we're going to go way up here, and we're going to place our first finger on the 11th fret of the G string, our second finger on the 13th fret of the D string, and our fourth finger on the 15th fret of the A string, and that's the root position of this C diminished triad. Okay, so now we're going to do the triads on the D, G, and B string. We're going to start with the second inversion. So we're going to place our first finger on the 4th fret of the D string, our second finger on the 4th fret of the B string, and our third finger on the 5th fret of the G string. And this is the second inversion. So now we're going to go up here, and we're going to do the root position of this triad. Going to place our first finger on the 7th fret of the B string, second finger on the 8th fret of the G string, our fourth finger on the 10th fret of the D string. Then we're going to come up here to the first inversion. Going to place our first finger on the 11th fret of the G string, our second finger on the 13th fret of the D string, and our fourth finger on the 13th fret of the B string. Okay, so that's all the inversions and positions of the triads on the D, G, and B string. Okay, so now we're going to go to the last set of strings, the G, the B, and the E string. And we're going to start here on the root position of this triad, the diminished triad. And we're going to place our first finger on the 2nd fret of the high E string, our third finger on the 4th fret of the B string, and our fourth finger on the 5th fret of the G string. Okay. Now we're going to come up to the first inversion. We're going to place our first finger on the 7th fret of the B string, our second finger on the 8th fret of the G string, and our third finger on the 8th fret of the high E string. Now we're going to go to the second inversion up here. We're going to place our first finger and bar it across. There's two ways to play this. This is how I play it. I bar my finger across on the 11th fret of the D, the B, excuse me, the G, the B, and the high E. And then I place my third finger on the 13th fret of the B string. You could make it, if you want to place your first finger on the 11th fret of the G string, second finger on the 11th fret of the high E string, and your fourth finger on the 13th fret of the B string. You can play it that way as well. I find for me that this is just much easier to play if I just bar that across the G, B, and high E string. Okay, so that's all the voicings of the triads on sets of 3, the strings in sets of 3. But I just wanted to say something about diminished chords. They're used mainly for passing chords. Like if I was going to play this A7 and I wanted to move to a B minor, I'd play that B flat diminished chord there. So I could play another diminished chord to move up to the C sharp minor 7th. So diminished, minor, diminished, minor. They're used a lot as passing chords. They're also, like if you're playing a blues and you're in the key of A, they're used a lot of times to pass from the 4 back to the 1 chord. So if I'm on the 4 chord, I'm in the key of A, and I'm playing a D7, I'm going back to the 1, I can throw that diminished chord in there. That's a D sharp diminished going back to this A chord. That's all where those diminished licks come from. That, and a lot of guys, they'll just imply that it's being played, and sometimes it's not even played, and that's okay too. So that can happen as well. All right, so another thing that diminished chords to me, how they're used. See, I relate to major chords as sounding happy. To me, each chord reflects an emotion for me. So if I play an A chord, you know, that sounds happy to me. But if I play a minor chord, that relates to a sorrow or sadness to me. I hear that sound and it makes me, you know, sad. It's a sad sound. So the diminished chord can be used, I've heard it used in a lot of movies, as creating like a suspense, like something's going to happen. If you're watching a movie and there's a villain or bad guy and he's about to do something bad, you might hear that kind of stuff in the background as he's getting ready to do. I mean, it's not going to be exactly that, but you know, you'll hear those diminished chords. So to me, diminished chords, other than being like a passing chord, they create a suspenseful sound, you know, like they sound like something's getting ready to happen. And they usually resolve, you know. It's a chord that you have to have a resolution to. You got to resolve it somewhere. So anyway, if you like what I'm doing here, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, tell your friends, share my videos. And if you got any questions, write them down, you know, in the comments section. I try to answer every question I get. And sometimes I get people wanting me to learn artists. There's some people I've just, you know, I'm not going to be able to play, you know. I mean, somebody wanted me to learn, do a thing on the saxophonist Charlie Parker. I'm not even able to, not even close to that league. Charlie Parker was in a league of his own. So I'm not that musician, you know. I appreciate Charlie Parker and I appreciate all those giant jazz guitar players, or he was a saxophonist, I know that. But all these great jazz players and blues players, I have nothing but tons of respect for those people. But there's just some limitations, you know. There's no way I could play a Charlie Parker song probably. But anyway, if you like what I'm doing, you know, like I said, hit the subscribe button. And until next time, y'all have a blessed evening. And you'll see you soon.